Welcome. Welcome to Ask the Divorce Whisperer, Facebook Live event. I'm Marta Papa. I'm your host, and we're so glad you're joining us here for this live event where our goal is to demystify divorce. We meet the first and third Friday of every month at 1 p.m. Where I'll go live and interview a divorce expert about their role in the divorce process. And I'll have them answer the following question. If you could only give one piece of advice to someone who you really care about who's getting divorced, what would that piece of advice be? And they'll give us that piece of advice, and then we'll kind of take that piece of advice and run with it and see why they think it's so important and how it might be so helpful to people who are struggling with divorce or considering divorce. So I hope you'll join me in the future. We also videotape these, and they play usually by Friday night. My secretary has them live on YouTube. And so if you go to Ask the Divorce Whisperer on YouTube, you can see this again if you think you want to watch this version again, or you know somebody else that might benefit from what you're hearing today. You can have them go to Ask the Divorce Whisperer on YouTube and watch this program again if you think it would benefit them. So know that this isn't your only chance to get this wisdom and knowledge. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest today. Her name is Patti Bitter. We've known each other for a long time. She is a go-to therapist for me for clients who are struggling with the question of, should we get divorced? Should we not get divorced? Can we still put Humpty Dumpty back together again? Or are we too far over the bridge? And we were just chatting before we started, and I loved her comment of, that's not my decision. I don't tell people what to do. It's their decision. But I help them look at the underlying issues and the questions that they have and provide a place where they can talk to each other and be heard. And then they can figure that out for themselves. I don't tell them what to do. They can figure that out for themselves. And that's a sign of a really good therapist. So let me introduce to you Patti Bitter. Patti, you want to say hi?
I would love to. Thanks so much for having me on, Marta. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you for your time and the bits of wisdom that you're going to give us today. And so let's start out with the question that I always start out with. If you had a family member or a friend that was very important to you, you really cared what happened to them, and they were considering or going through a divorce, and you could only give them one piece of advice, what would that be if you had to boil it down to one piece of advice?
My go-to is wait before you plunge headlong into another relationship. And that includes getting on dating apps and things like that. In my experience, people want to leap over the pain of separating and coming apart, and get involved too quickly. And oftentimes they don't even know themselves well enough to know what happened in their marriage that led to this breakup. So I really encourage people to take a breath, take some time, get to know themselves better.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I kind of giggled when you said that, kind of leap over, but I giggled because, I see clients do that. I'm part of you're part of the decision-making process for them. I'm part of the action process for them to get divorced, and decision-making about how they're going to divide their stuff, how they're going to parent, how they're going to be able to afford to both live comfortably in the future, have enough money, for two different households to exist. So they've usually decided by the time they get to me, but they will say, before we even get to maintenance or child support, they will say, can we hurry this up? Because I already have wedding invitations made out for my August wedding. And this has to be filed with the court, sit with the court for 30 days before the judge approves it, and then sit with the court for 30 days after he or she has approved it before the divorce is really final. And so it's really bigamy to be getting married before that. And I know. And I'm thinking, wow, I thought you were struggling with, should I stay in the house? Should we change the school district? Are we not going to be able to pay for select baseball? And really, you're trying to figure out which other person to hook up with before you're even done unhooking this relationship, because there's so much to unhooking that relationship. But I totally agree with you. It's so painful that people want to avoid the pain. And so they go for the shoulder that they can cry on, or they go for that compassionate person if their spouse, they didn't think their spouse was compassionate, or they go for this exciting person if they think their spouse is boring after 25 years. And so they're looking ahead, but they're looking too far ahead. There's that mountain you want to be on top of, but you got to walk across the prairie first, and then the meadow, and then the foothills, and then go to the top of the mountain. You'll get to the top of the mountain, but you can't helicopter there, or you're going to miss a lot of the lessons that are going to make you happy at the top of the mountain.
And that is
top of the mountain. The purpose is you think that's going to make you happy. And so that's why you're going to go up there. And that isn't really what makes you happy, but you don't know that yet.
Exactly. And you use the magic word lessons, because I think there's a lot to learn from unpacking, when you're going through the divorce process, or even after the divorce. It's helpful to unpack, like, what the heck happened? How did we get here? It's easy for us to say, well, he or she was just not the right person for me, or to blame everything on the other partner, which I see a lot. And it's much more fruitful if we're willing to pause and do some self-examination. It's like, why did I choose this person in the first place? Why was that my choice? Because if I don't come to understand that and what piece that played for me, I'm really very likely to pick a very similar type of person and repeat the whole process.
That is so right. I even wrote down what you were talking about. I wrote down unpack. I love that word. And pause. Yes, when I'm helping people design their new future, living apart, but still parenting children, they aren't trying to unpack anything. They really aren't. They really aren't. And it's not my job to do that with them. It's my job to get them to the future. But it's a really necessary thing for them to do. It's a very wise thing for them to do. Love that word, to unpack of, okay, what did I throw in this suitcase that made it explode? It couldn't be zipped up anymore. It exploded. But I threw the stuff in there. And often it's really easy to blame one person. Well, you had an affair. Okay, well, you spent all the money at the casino gambling. Like, there'll be some really bad behavior by one person. And so the other party points to that and says, well, she had an affair, or he's a gambler, or she's an alcoholic. There's plenty of guilt to pass around, right? There's plenty of blame to pass around. And you might have a really good reason. You can point to that. And then that's your reason to everybody around you of why the marriage fell apart. And you can say it in one sentence: meth. Gambling. You can say it in one sentence, and then you don't have to explain anymore. But it really isn't just meth. It really isn't just gambling. How did you attract a gambler?
Exactly.
Or how did they become a gambler while being married to you for 25 years. Not that it's your fault, but wow, you sure don't want to attract that person again in the future, right? And
Yes. How did you contribute?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you, what is the piece that, is it because you're a people pleaser?
Yeah.
Is it because you were, not somebody who liked confrontation, so you avoided confrontation at all costs? You will take those behaviors with you into the next relationship unless you're willing to take that time out and really come to work on that for yourself.
Yeah.
And, I talk to my couples, or individuals and couples actually, about increasing their muscles, but I'm talking about their emotional muscles, their skills to be able to speak their truth assertively, without name calling, without all the rest, but just to know what they know.
Yeah.
It's a very, you mentioned affairs, and I'm blessed to have worked with many couples who come to me thinking that they have to get a divorce because of an affair. And then because both parties, mind you, both parties are willing to take ownership of their actions to that.
Yes, that's right.
Then there's real hope for them to actually be able to even have a better marriage at that point. There are some couples that's just such a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you put it in terms of you married a gambler and they spent all the 401k and that's why you're getting divorced. Well, how was it that they gambled all the money away and you didn't notice it?
No.
Yeah. What is it about you and money and you're afraid to look in the bank account, or you won't take any responsibility for balancing the checking account, or you don't ask where the person's going in the morning? What is that about you? You didn't gamble, all right, but what is that about you that opened up that door to allow that to happen?
Yeah, and a lot of times it boils down to fear.
Yeah.
And so if you do end up going through a divorce, that fear, just because you've separated from that particular person / problem, doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to be brave and be able to have your eyes wide open and take care of yourself.
That's a great quote. So, you said something else that's really interesting, and I think most people would find interesting, that you've been blessed to have some couples come to you where one person has had an affair, but they both are willing to look at their own actions and see what they contributed to it. So as a divorce lawyer, when I'm not mediating, unfortunately, not everybody mediates. So when I'm not mediating and I have someone, sorry, let that go. And I have someone come in and say, I'm getting divorced because he had an affair, all right? It's really hard. Let go, I'm so sorry.
It's pretty
all about live, right? It's really hard for me to say to that person, I wonder what you contributed to that affair. They aren't willing to go there with me. It's all about blame, blame, blame. And I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. And you need to help me. And my spouse needs to help me. And the court needs to help me. I deserve, because I got, what on, all right? Because my spouse had an affair. So how do you approach that? With, even though you didn't have an affair, Jill, there's something in the chemistry between you and Jack that didn't make him have an affair, but it opened the door so that he could fit that in.
So one of the things that I want to make clear, that when a couple comes to me and they're in crisis, in that initial, I just found out, oh my God, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
That's not the time to introduce that.
Got it.
However, it can be a way for me to say, there was a crack in the foundation anyway, and he chose poorly.
Yes.
She chose poorly.
Yes.
There's no letting the person who had the affair sort of off the hook. It's not
Go
about
off the
that.
hook. No.
It's absolutely no. This is how you chose to deal with whatever problems you were having in the relationship.
Mhm.
So that's something that needs to be addressed on your end.
Mhm.
Because if you don't address that and you get in another relationship and then you're not happy in that relationship, you're going to take that same out again. So I really try to create an atmosphere of learning. It's like make it safe for them to be able to, and again, it is a blessing to be able to, and it's not quick, but over time, within a few months, being able to have people say, you know what, if I'm honest with myself, I was consumed with my girlfriends, my children, my own life, and I took him for granted.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
and I agree with you 1,000%. The person does not cause their partner to
Yeah.
have an affair.
Yeah.
It maybe creates a little fertile ground for it, so to speak,
Mhm.
but it's still on the person who had the affair. It's their
Right.
choice.
Yeah.
That's how they chose to deal with it. So,
Right.
it's, and again, if the person who didn't have the affair doesn't look at that,
Mhm.
I can remember one person calling me after a session and saying, Patti, who knew men had feelings? It's one of my favorite lines ever.
No, I know.
True statement. It's just great. It's like, yes, actually they do too.
And I can so see where maybe nobody's doing anything wrong, but somebody's going back to school and getting a PhD and they're
Yes.
all consumed in it, or they have 6 children and they're all consumed in the children, and husband is out here or wife is out here. And so they aren't doing anything wrong, but they are opening up the door for the person to seek solace somewhere else, or to feel I'm not important anymore. I'm going to make you jealous and show you I am important, or whatever's going through their mind. They're trying to achieve something,
Right.
They're trying to
Exactly.
give their spouse something. And then it gets kind of out of hand, and then they do things that they never thought they could do.
Exactly. And that's why post-divorce, that waiting period, that pause to
Yeah.
kind of examine their own, like,
Yeah.
if I'm the person who did choose to have an affair,
Mhm.
what was that about for me? And that's assuming that the affair has ended.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't end.
It's still going on. That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Anything else you notice about couples when they take the time to sort of unpack, like you're saying, of
Mhm.
I didn't do it, but I had some part in it, or I watched it and didn't ask about it, or I was afraid to be involved in it. I was afraid to ask about it. Are there any other nuggets in there that you have found, besides fear? Maybe it's all fear-based, I don't know, but besides fear, that the spouse who's not the bad spouse, according to society, that they've learned about themselves by taking the time to unpack it, so that they don't repeat it in the future.
Mhm.
Anything else?
It's really just about, so along with the word fear, I would use avoidance,
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
like sticking your head in the sand because it's so painful. Another thing is to address shame, because if we feel ashamed about ourselves, for instance, post-divorce, let's say, my spouse left me for somebody else, and I have a lot of shame about that. Yet I'm putting myself out there to be in other relationships without addressing that, sort of putting myself back together, if you will,
Mhm.
then I'm likely to get involved with somebody else who either has an equal amount of shame at some level. This is getting really psychological, but
Great.
it's sort of,
Right.
it's sort of at the core. We tend, water seeks its own level. We
Yes.
sort of tend to do that so that we match up with people who are in the same stage of, let's call it, emotional growth.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
it
Tens don't
behooves,
attract ones.
yeah.
Ones
So
don't attract tens. Yeah.
So
That's
it really
what you say all the time.
but it behooves us then to know ourselves better, to do
Yeah.
some growth so
Yeah.
that when we are ready for another relationship, we're more likely to find somebody else who's engaged in some emotional growth. And
Yeah.
it just makes for a better partnership all around.
How interesting. I never thought about shame. Never thought about shame, especially if you're the person that looks good in society. You didn't do the bad. And all of this is shame-based because
Yes.
till 1986, Missouri's laws, divorce laws, were such that you had to prove that your spouse committed one of 9 different kinds of marital misconduct.
Yes.
So you couldn't get divorced until you proved one of 9 kinds of marital misconduct.
Right.
And then the judge could divorce you. And so what's misconduct? Shame. I mean, what's misconduct? Shame. Shame on you. You had an affair. You spent all the family's money. You dissipated all the marital assets. You didn't support your family. You abandoned them and didn't support them. Those are all things to be ashamed about. And so it was really, when I think back, it's really a shame-based system. And then it took, and we still have that shame-based system. There's 2 roads to the courthouse. One is you follow the shame, you follow the marital misconduct road to the courthouse. Same courthouse, but it's the misconduct road, and you prove misconduct, right?
Right.
The other one is the no fault road. Same judge, same courtroom. You just don't say what the misconduct is, and you just say we have irreconcilable differences, and the marriage is irretrievably broken. And you don't say what it is. You don't tell the judge what it is. You don't have to tell anybody what it is. But that shame route is still there. It's still there. Yes. And if you go on the shame route, you can get more property. We're still punishing. We're still punishing. You can get more property. It used to be you could get more property and more maintenance.
Yes.
And they knocked the maintenance out. And then they said, well, we shouldn't take your children away from you. You get as much children time, but you don't get, you maybe only get 40% of the assets instead of 50% of the assets, because we're going to punish the wrongdoer. So there's still that wrongdoer and the person who it was done to, that is still woven into our legal system.
It is. And I do want to throw in the caveat. I know that you agree with this because we've had other conversations. The exception to that is when there's abuse involved.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a different.
That's right.
That's a very different thing that we're talking about.
Yes, I totally agree. Yes, totally agree.
And the other thing I think too, you mentioned children before, and when I think about, suggesting to clients that they wait before they jump into another relationship, I've worked with many people, I can say that, but they're emotionally feeling too unwanted or inadequate. And so getting into another relationship boosts that look, I must be wanted because this person wants me. Mm-hmm. So it's coming externally, but unfortunately, without boosting their own internal skills, what I see, especially for single parents who have young children at home, is they engage in bringing multiple partners into the home. So the kids start to get attached to one person, and then that person disappears, and then mom's bringing another person into the house, and the kid. I end up with those children who are now adults in my office talking about just how hard that was for them
Yeah, I bet
to
you do.
not feel
Yeah.
safe, not feel secure.
Well, it's like a revolving door. I lost dad. Let's just use dad for example. I lost
Sure.
dad, and now mom's dating this guy. And I have somebody I'm helping get divorced right now, and found out that she was taking the kids to a friend's house to play basketball and have a cookout. Isn't he great? He's going to replace your dad. And when that relationship is over, and there were a couple
Right.
of affairs during the marriage, right?
Yeah.
And and so that's her way of handling when she's mad at her husband, just affairs.
Right.
Even during the divorce, even
Right.
during the actual divorce.
And I get it. I mean, people are wounded. We're wounded,
And it
and
falls on the kids. The kids are like, I don't know what a stable dad is. I've had 5, I don't know what that is. And I don't know how to provide that for children I might have in the future, because I don't know what that is. I don't know what that
and I'm
is.
scared what if I turn out like that person or that person? It's like,
A
it's
double
very,
wound. It's
it
so
is.
many wounds on top of each other. I mean, the divorce wound is big enough to engulf everything you've got in you, but then to keep pouring salt on that wound, salt on that wound, salt on that wound, that's a wounded person.
It
And it's
is.
an
And
innocent
I
child.
don't,
It's an
I
innocent
don't,
child.
it is. And I don't, I in no way am I trying to pass judgment on somebody who's
No.
doing that. What I see is that they're hurting, and if they are willing to seek therapy, I can help them mend that internal
Mhm.
place so that they make healthier choices.
Yeah.
Just real quick, because I know we're going to run out of time, it reminds me of people who use alcohol or pot or something like that, or wine. I've had divorcees who will finally tell me after months of therapy, I probably should admit that I'm drinking almost a bottle of wine every
Every
night.
night. Yeah.
And I'm like, I understand why you're doing
Yeah.
it, but there might be healthier ways for us to, work on some coping skills
That
with your
pain.
loneliness and that pain.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And it doesn't feel like you're being judgmental. We're looking at it's Monday morning quarterbacking,
Okay.
we aren't in there when it's happening. Usually we're
Right.
looking at it after the fact, but we're trying to look at it, I think, in a greater way, in a more holistic way of throwing the pebble in the middle of the water and all the ripples that it makes all
Yes.
the way out. And you think, well, it's my life. I'm going to throw myself in there to Match.com. And what do you care? How it doesn't hurt you. And if it hurts me, too bad, so sad. I'll get over it. I'll get over it. Well, it does hurt other people. It hurts that person and their kids and your kids. And it does have a ripple effect that you cannot control. And
Exactly.
if people can see that, and they care about those other people that they're hurting in the process, then they won't do it, and they'll seek a different way to soothe themselves. How
Yes.
about
And
soothing themselves?
there
Yeah,
are healthy ways to soothe ourselves. There
yeah,
really are.
yeah. That's great. So we're almost done. Any last minute nugget? Don't have to, but just in case you have a last minute nugget.
I don't really, one of the reasons that I refer to you, Marta, is because you are so protective of children.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I love that, because quite frankly, when I went through my divorce years and years and years and way too long ago, before we were more knowledgeable, I didn't do such a good job. And that's why I became determined and sought extra training to do couples therapy, because
Awesome.
I wish I would have had your book back then, but you hadn't written it yet. So
No, I haven't written it. I was still learning. I was going through my divorce. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah, we do learn more and more about the kids. And let me just end with this. That's on that note. one thing that I'm seeing the courts turn to, which I'm just thrilled about, is they're beginning to see that court is not the place for children. I mean, it used to be put Sammy on the stand, ask who he wants to live with, and here's mom, dangling keys to the red Mustang convertible sitting in the, I wonder where Sammy's going to go. The red Mustang, really? Hello, yeah. So and the until Sammy's got to live with dad, with mom has the Mustang. No. So what I see, the courts are beginning to change. They need to change. And they're beginning to see that children are not the best deciders of who they should live with. It's really too much of a burden to put on the children.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know what? Lawyers really aren't the best deciders of who the children should live with. And even guardians ad litem, I'm gonna make a lot of people mad with that, but guardians ad litem aren't trained. They got a law degree. We don't learn anything about child development in law school. They are not trained in what's best for children at different ages and different developmental stages. And so the courts are, via mediation, they are reaching out now to mental health professionals and saying, we want you to come into the system. You child specialists, we want you that special in 0 to 6 years old, right? That specialized. We want you to come into the legal system and work with these children and then work with these parents about what this 6-year-old needs, but doesn't have the words to tell you what they need. And so I have a PhD. I don't. I'm pretending. I'm pretending that I'm, a therapist helping the court. I have a PhD in attachment theory between 0 and 6 years old. And I can tell you what that 6-year-old needs to be the least scarred when they grow up. And
which I love.
I know. And the courts are clapping and saying, great, come and tell us and we'll do it. Come and tell us, we'll do that. So the courts are starting to open up and say, we don't know all the answers, but there are people out there that study this. They do have the answers. Let's invite them into the circle and let them help us come up with a plan for the 6-year-old, 10-year-old, and 15-year-old. All the needs are different, of what those kids need. Because I find that most of my parents, if they know what the child needs, they'll do it. They just don't know. And if you tell them what they need, they'll do it, but they just don't know. So it's an educational process.
Very much so. And even the parent who is so livid still at their spouse. Yeah. For the divorce, whatever it is. It may take a time or two. Eventually, though, if we can educate them about how their anger is affecting their kids. That they have more of a tendency. It's like, go take it to your girlfriend's or your guy friend, find somebody, another adult to do your work with. Don't expose your kid is not your confidant. I know. Shoulder is not your confidant shoulder to cry on. Don't do it. Go find someplace else. Just go to a bar, man. Sit at the bar. You're going to find a whole bunch of people to commiserate with. Just don't hook up with that person. Don't hook up with it. That's the last nugget I'm waiting for. That's it, Patti. That's it. That's the last nugget. Just don't hook up with them. Cry your river of tears. Get an Uber home. Get an Uber home. Start out fresh tomorrow, and then start looking at your life. What part did you play? Thank you so much. So much wisdom packed in such a small amount of time. And
we're going to put your name and address and contact information on YouTube. But for
Okay.
people who are not going to look for it on YouTube, can you tell people an email and or a phone number of how they can reach you if they want to reach you personally after today?
Sure. So my work email is Patti, it's Patti at tapestrycounseling.com. That's also my website. It's tapestrycounseling.com. It's got more information than they will ever want to know, ever. It's just it's a lot of words.
Love it.
So
And
I think
phone number to get quickly to you. Is there a phone number?
636-364-8656.
Can you repeat that one time?
Sure. 636-364-8656.
Got it. Got
And
it.
all that information should be on my website too, tapestrycounseling.com.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your years of experience,
Thank
your
you for
knowledge,
having
your
me.
wisdom. So you're going to help somebody out there. You're helping somebody out there. Okay.
Thanks, Marta.
you
Have a
so-
wonderful weekend.
You too. And we hope we see you in about 2 weeks. We hope you see the rest of the viewers in about 2 weeks. Okay.
Take
Thank
good care.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Bye.